Alright guys, hey, this is Sean with MTG Mafia, and I'm here with Justin Deal. We are talking about, this was our FNM for our first night at Press Start to Play, the new shop that we just opened in Coeur d'Alene, and we just wanted to bring you coverage of the finals. This is our top table in round 4, and this is Dan Baker on your left, James Kennerly on your right. Dan is on a homebrew of Junk Reanimator, and James is playing Jund. So both leading off with a tapped Shockland, and you played Dan round 1 that night, didn't you, Justin?
I did play Dan, and he was playing Junk Reanimator, and it was actually semi-decent. Like, I mean, I was playing Rug Delver at the time against him, and it comboed off very nicely. It didn't wait to do most of his stuff. He just kind of threw everything out there, and he got his big creatures, his Grizzlebrand, and everything, and just kind of said, well, I'm going to win the game. And there's nothing much really I could do about it. And I see here, as he's going on, he's actually starting to build his land base to actually start to combo off.
Yeah, so Dan just plays all these fatties. He's just like Battle Cruiser Magic, and he drops Angel of Serenity is like his main target, but he'll drop Sigarda, and he has Gristlebrand in there, and just a bunch of these threats. But he's running like Thrag Tusk and just those staples to get him there into the late game, and then in the late game he has better cards than you. So that's his plan. It looks like we're just playing a tap land and going with a salvage. Or sorry, this is mulch. We watched Dan do some mulches that were all lands and no lands that night, so that was interesting. But that one is a nice even 2. James being on Jund here. Jund comes out a little bit slow. He's probably sitting on some removal spells if you're gonna play that much and not really cast anything relevant. I'm not sure what James has as far as early game like Borderlands or Nighthawks, but pretty sure he has some Nighthawks in that deck. But Huntmaster on turn 4, not bad, it'll work. And losing the token. Oh, okay. Dan gives him a real wolf token so we can see what's going on. We have not actually watched all of these games, so if we're not entirely sure what's going on, that's why. So, things Dan can do on turn 5. What do we have besides Thrag, Tusk, and Sigarda? Is there anything else?
Well, around turn 5, if he has his Unburial Rites already in the graveyard with a target like Grizzlebrand or something like that, he can cast that and hit that pretty well, and that would put James in a tough spot, only having a Huntsmaster out. But he decides to go with the Thragtusk to gain life. He probably doesn't have the whole thing set up. So, as you can see now, he actually doesn't have it, and he pitches a Grizzly Savage there. So,
yeah, Duress is not a card that I run in Jund. I think it's interesting that James is running it in the main deck, but I don't think it works that well. And like against the Reanimator, that was good to hit the salvage, but there's going to be times where they show you all creatures and Unburial Rites or something, and you're like, oh crap. Most of that deck, is a-okay with having stuff go to the graveyard. I would say, as a Jund player, the resiliency of this deck is really hard. There's times where you really want to make them discard, and you want to like rack Ghost Return, but you might just set them up for their combo, and it makes all your cards awkward. Your spot removal is okay, but if their guys are coming back, it's not that good for you. So we've got a Flip Huntmaster and a Wolf. No Wolf Run. Not sure what's in James's hand, but kind of an awkward spot to be in. I'm surprised he's swinging there to trade, especially knowing that he has Restoration Angel. But I guess he murders the Thragtusk, just knowing that we're getting the bounce effect. But now he's gonna trade his Huntmaster for a guy anyway, so not ideal. What do you think of that attack?
now I think what James was trying to do was bait out the Restoration Angel. Now I'm not quite sure why he would try to bait that out, because that's what Dan wants to do, is to bounce it, get that creature out, get that going. But Huntsmaster trade, I don't know if James really thought out. He might have another Huntsmaster in hand. I'm not quite sure. Maybe that's what his plan was. But to really put myself in James' shoes, I'm not quite sure what he was thinking.
And it looks like, I'm not sure if that wolf is attacking with Vigilance. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm not seeing either creature having died, so I'm a little confused. I'm thinking maybe he took 4, and maybe Dan just based on his hand thinks that doesn't need a block. Maybe he has Angel in his hand and just wants the pressure. Not entirely sure. It depends on what he drew the last couple draws here. So
he might have put James on another removal spell so that if he did double block, he might get 2 cards out of 1. So
gotcha.
He did have 3
that's
open.
True. That's true. And this is probably what he was thinking is, hey, I can be more aggressive here. I'll Unburial Rights my Thragtusk and just start swinging and put the pressure on and not lose a guy. So, but yeah, good point. If he double blocks and loses a guy, that's a pretty bad trade. And against Jund, it's likely that they have the removal. So, James tapping 6, and we are going to Mizium Mortars, which is a-okay. That's a great play. I don't personally run Mizium Mortars. I tried it for a while. I just prefer Bonfire, but right there, that was pretty fantastic. So now the pressure on again for Dan. Losing some life here, but still in a pretty comfortable life total with multiple Thragtusk triggers. And yeah, not a problem. Hey, look, I have another Thragtusk, so 5 more life. So James, at this point, as a Jund player, you kind of need an Olivia. This is the point where you just need to draw her because you're almost screwed without it. Rakdos Return, pretty awesome. Let's see if it sets Dan up here. It'll be interesting to see. So we have Gristlebrand in the yard, it looks like, and an Avacyn Pilgrim. So that's okay. We just have James has to cross his fingers and hope that Dan does not top deck and Burial Rights at any point here. And he misses. Grabs a land instead. But with a comfortable life total, hey, let's bash for 5. What do you think of the block there with the wolf?
I think James could have been fine taking 5 there, even though I'm not quite sure what his hand is. Chumping when he was at 19 seems a little odd. But, I mean, well, he had a Thragtusk, so I don't know why he chumped, looking at it now. So I don't think that was the best play to do.
It's interesting that wolf was probably going to chump block later, but if you this deck, I just feel like it might be worth taking that 5 initially, knowing that I mean, that's tough. You could throw it away, but not having a removal spell and just losing the wolf. Maybe if you draw burn later, like a pillar or something. I'm not entirely sure on James' list. Maybe that is the right call. It's hard to say. And this is a weird spot to be in. Your creatures are usually better than your opponents as a Jund player, so it kind of sucks to be staring down a beast especially when you know that they can Unburial Rights and just get way more copies of the card than you. Woo! Avacyn Pilgrim.
Avacyn Pilgrim, yeah. Well, he might have reason why he chump blocked earlier on was because James might be realizing he's starting to hit that later game, and he realizes that Dan probably has a better later game just because of the bigger fatties that he can draw, and that he has the land to cast them from his hand. So he might have tried to alleviate as much damage as he can while he can. So later on he might have that extra 5 life to do something, to draw that removal.
Right. I think if it's me in his position, I'd probably try to hold spells, flip my Huntmaster, and get 2 tokens. Try to trade 2 tokens for a Thragtusk. Maybe that's not right. I'm not sure, but I think I would use that more as a resource than just a chump block there. Hard to say. It's unless you know their hand, it's hard to know. So here comes Nighthawk, which is good. It's going to put James in a position where he can really start getting in again, as long as Dan doesn't draw something relevant. And the life gain is also going to be a big deal with all the creatures that Dan plays. So a mulch, Dan tries to set it up here, and there it is. Unburial Rights off the top, 3 lands. That's a-okay. So draw 3 and set up your combo. Now with Gristlebrand, we can do some more drawing if we want to. Land into play, and Dan is going to Unburial Rights, and he will take that Gristlebrand. So Griselbrand on the battlefield now. That Nighthawk looks okay. Because I can trade with that Griselbrand, but it's not...
It's not one of the best trades you want to do.
No, you definitely, like, you just went from an awesome, you know, you had some advantage to now you're way behind, and all you can do is maybe kill it and hope he doesn't reanimate it again. So 7/7 lifelink that draws you cards is pretty gross. So we'll see what happens here. Dan and I were talking about this later. I think I came in one turn after this to watch the rest of the game, and there was a point where Dan just well, we'll get there and we'll talk about it, but he won't attack here because of the Nighthawk, and he was discussing with me that maybe he should have. So Thragtusk gaining more life. Dan is just way in control right now, and you can kind of sense as a Jund player that control of this game is slipping, and that the end is probably drawing near. There's not a lot you can do. One gigantic bonfire would be pretty good right now, but that's almost all you have. I run Sever the Bloodline as a 1-of in my deck, and I don't know what James runs. So this Rakdos return right here is just money. He needed this to happen. Manages to take and undo everything that Dan just did off this Griselbrand. Plus he's doing more damage. So this is a key point where, hey, if now Dan's kind of in a range where it's kind of dangerous for him, so he's got to play careful now.
Maybe we find that Dan cheated over now.
we find that Dan is a dirty player. Okay, Centaur Healer in the main. I don't know that makes a lot of sense to me right away, but I think what Dan's trying to do is just push to the late game and know that his late game is better. What do you think of Centaur Healer in the main?
I think, I don't know how much as Dan's played this deck. I mean, I think it's a safe call against stuff he hasn't played against. You know, I'm not quite sure coming into the new shop that he knew what he was going to play against, so having that extra 3 life and the 3/3 blocker doesn't seem that bad. I mean, it doesn't really equivalent to his combo in any way, but I think it gives a little bit of a cushion just in case his deck starts to whiff, even though it is pretty consistent.
So if you're watching closely, you're going to notice that James traded that Thragtusk earlier, and I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I think this is the point. You just saw me push some tokens over. I just came over to the table and kind of checking out the board state, so I missed the fact that we had a trade with Thragtusk. Thragtusk shouldn't be on the board, and James gets an extra trade out of it. I think it was just a mistake, but you're going to see that. It doesn't really make sense. It should have been different, but there's nothing I can do at this point, so we will have to ignore it. We're both in top deck mode, and I think off the top of your library, if you're Jund, you need right now. James is really hoping for Bonfire, and Dan is okay with anything but a land almost, and a Pilgrim, I guess. But he's just got more dudes and more ability to keep attacking, so the triple beast there is quite good. But we could go Sigarda, we could go Angel, we could go another Thragtusk. There's a lot of things we could do. And this is okay. I mean, this is pretty good. We're going to draw some cards. 3 cards, that seems worthwhile. I think I would do the same thing in that position. As much as you want to keep him around and make beasts and all that stuff, I don't think he's going to survive, so it's probably right to just draw some cards while you can. And a second Nighthawk also seems good.
That's pretty good.
So Griselbrand kind of in a weird spot. And Dan was saying he was just afraid of, like, you know, hitting that piece of removal, or just, you know, losing Griselbrand, or getting, you know, shot in response to the life game. You know, like trying to draw cards, or he just wasn't sure what to do with that Griselbrand at that point. Not sure on what James's hand was, and he felt like he had enough pressure with the beast, so he said he was just going to keep pushing through. And felt like it was a little more cautiously than he needed to play the game, but he thought, hey, I'm going to win anyway, so I feel comfortable doing this. It works out for him, I think. So James is just in a tough spot where it's like, man, do I block? Do I trade with a token? And he does, because he's got to get rid of some stuff. Okay, we've dealt with some tokens. James has gained 2 life. His board's looking a little bit empty, but again, he's able to just stave off that Gristlebrand with the Death Touch. What do you think of Gristlebrand in the main?
Gristlebrand is one of those key cards, I think, that can draw you cards, can be that body that can just win you the game. And right now, you're right, it's in a weird spot with that Nighthawk, and Dan is playing really, really cautious. I mean, James is just hoping for that removal. But I like Gristlebrand in the main. It's actually really cool. I played the deck Frights before it had Gristlebrand, which it had Elish Norns, and I feel like it doesn't wipe the board like Elish Norn used to, which was amazing when I played it, and it didn't buff your guys, but it can draw you those cards that you need to either sustain, removal, draw your Angel, which will just wipe the board and you swing in, gain that life back, and just keep the process going, which is really just amazing.
Yeah, this is pretty good, and Dan ripping that Gavany Township is pretty awesome here. It's not bad at all. I feel like I probably would have attacked with Gristlebrand there. You know that he's going to gain some life back, and he's only taking a little bit of damage. Your souls do get big enough that they start trading with Nighthawks next turn, but I still probably attack Gristlebrand there, just knowing you have advantage, and 8 life seems worth it. And then you can, still be drawing cards and stuff. So I like that trade there if it's me. What do you think if you're James right now?
If I was James right now, I would probably be thinking I need a Bonfire. I need something. I can't deal with this Gristlebrand right now. I have to hit some sort of removal. Because right now, yeah, and with having that Burial Rites hit the graveyard, James is probably just thinking that he is losing control of this game. It's like, from this standpoint, watching it back now, it doesn't seem like James is going to be able to pull this one out.
Yeah, and even like 4 turns ago, I would have said screwed. Like, unless you rip that Bonfire, this game's over. And James knows it. His guys are now exiled with the Angel, but I think probably 4 or 5 turns ago, this game's over, and you're just, hoping for the miracle, hoping you can hit it. So he doesn't, and Dan takes game 1. Let's go take a look at game 2 and see what happens. Alright guys, welcome to game 2. We are back between Junk Reanimator and Jund. Jund's on your right with James, and Dan's on your left with Junk Reanimator. Reanimator took game 1, and we are starting game 2. So we're leading off with a Shockland tapped. What kinds of things would you be bringing in out of the board if you are Dan? Let's just start with that. What long pregnant pause there. What are you bringing if you're Dan?
Well, thinking about what Dan runs, seeing how he needs to hit his combo early on. He wants to get that going, and with that specific play. But what to bring in against Jund, which has a bunch of removal, bunch of flyers. And I think I saw some of Dan's tech, and he actually brings it in. You see it here, the Silk Lash Spider.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the MVPs of his deck for most of the night, to be honest. He always brought it in, takes down Thundermaw, Hellkites, Angel Serenity if he has enough land, which with his mulches, he usually never misses a land drop. And also Rampant Growth. But bringing in Silk Lash Spider is really smart. I can't say for anything else that he might bring in against Jund, other than maybe to take out some of his earlier on stuff like Centaur Healer or certain cards that he doesn't think he needs.
Yeah, I think I cut Centaur Healers, and I bring in probably another Sigarda. I think Dan has another Sigarda in his sideboard. Sigarda is just terrible for Jund to deal with. And the Silk Lash Spider, I think, is an awesome choice. I know it's slow, and but for a deck like this, where you're swatting vampires, and you're going into the late game, there's that 4-land mulch we were talking about. And what was I trying to say? Oh yeah, you've got. I mean, this is a slower matchup. You've got time. You can get that spider out there. Then you can start swatting stuff, and I just think it's a good choice. Lingering Souls, like Dan's gonna clog up the board, no problem. If you're James, what are you trying to bring in?
For James to bring in, he knows that Dan runs Sigarda and stuff like that. Maybe some sack effects, maybe an extra Liliana. But then again, he does clog up the board really, really well. So it's somewhat difficult to imagine. I mean, if I'm James, I'm probably gonna bring in stuff like Ground Seal, or I don't know if he runs some of the cheapy stuff like Cremate. You know, that's not really something we bring in, but something to exile the graveyard, or so he can't target anything in his graveyard. I think James brought in 2 Ground Seal this game, but he didn't see either one.
Yeah, and that'd be a great card to hit. It doesn't totally deal with the deck, but it's definitely good. It's going to shut down the reanimation. The one thing I'm not a fan of, Duress Game 2, definitely not something I would choose myself. Again, the deck has so many things that it just doesn't mind discarding, and you really don't want to make them discard unless you can deal with their graveyard. I think I remember James bringing in Tormod's Crypt, which I definitely like. And Crypt is a great answer, shuts everything down. Doesn't destroy the deck like maybe a Rest in Peace would, but definitely a good answer. I like to Sever the Bloodlines. I don't know if those are sideboard or main, but I definitely agree with that coming in against a matchup like this. If I'm James, I definitely want some some heavy duty stuff to finish with. And I don't know if James is playing Thundermaw. I don't know what kind of stuff he has. Even Thundermaw seems a little lackluster against this deck when you have angels to fight and stuff. But Dan cracked me up with this Elder Scale Worm when I saw him play it. I was like, what? For those of you who don't know, it has trample. Your life total, if it is below 7, becomes 7 when it enters the battlefield. And as long as he's in play, you cannot go below 7. So it's definitely one of those cards that apparently it's in the main deck, and Dan was saying, hey, you know what, it's kind of a weird card, but it's been getting me there against just more aggressive decks. If you can reanimate it early, they have a hard time dealing with a 7/7. So I'm kind of a fan, even though I probably wouldn't make the same choice myself. It was fun to see him cast it here. So do you make this attack if you're Dan?
I'm not quite sure. I don't know what's in Dan's hand right now, which is probably a reanimate spell. If he's swinging into a Nighthawk, which is going to trade with it, so he must have another Burial Rites or something, or maybe Dan's just trying to get rid of the Nighthawk for his Grizzlebrand to hit, or maybe I'm not quite sure. I wouldn't attack, honestly, but let's watch what Dan does here. See if he has the Burial Rites, which he probably does. Shaman, then
that Deathrite Shaman costs way too many.
Then Sigarda.
Okay, so Sigarda, obviously he's just trying to set his Sigarda up, so it makes sense. If I'm James and he attacks me with that Elder Scale Worm, I know I'm in trouble, but I'm really curious as to why. I'm thinking, that doesn't seem right when he attacks me like that. So. But I think you probably take advantage of it. Oh, sweet, especially if you have another 2/3 Death Touch. The Deathrite Shaman in the game 2 here. How do you feel about that?
I felt like Deathrite Shaman would be something James would actually put in to his deck to counter Dan, just to exile his creatures or exile his Burial Rites. I'm not quite sure what Deathrite Shaman is actually for Dan. Maybe it's helping him combo out when he uses his Grizzly Savage. He has a land in his graveyard. He can tap for more land. Right now, playing it late game, I'm not seeing too much of a value out of it. But
I'm not super impressed with Deathrite Shaman. Maybe Dan was thinking that the board would stall, or just trying to accelerate out and have a fatty on the board on turn 3. If you can go turn 1 Deathrite, turn 2 Mulch, turn 3 on Burial Rites, Grizzlebrand, that's pretty good. So I'm not sure how many he runs, or if those are sideboard or main deck or what. But they are a clock. I just finished playing a Modern PTQ on Sunday, and really enjoyed it. I'm playing, obviously, 4 Deathrite Shamans because I'm playing Jund, and I love the card in older formats. In Standard, it's pretty lackluster in my opinion. I don't think it's just incredible. But I could see it coming in here if you have nothing else to cut. If you're cutting already 5 cards and you just don't need to cut anything else, and it's in the main, I'd probably leave it in. Interesting. So Bonfire was top deck hero there for James, crushing everything. How are you feeling if you don't hit Bonfire there?
Well, you just saw Dan swing with the Sigarda into a Nighthawk, so I automatically assume he has something for that, because he wouldn't just throw away a Sigarda. But when he does play the Bonfire, it does put Dan in that spot where he has to put a little bit more pressure on the board. He has the 3/3, but that is not necessarily what the deck wants to do, is sit on a 3/3 for the rest of the game. It wants to cast its big guys, it wants to get him out there to do the damage. And right there, he plays the Unburial Rites, gets back probably this. Yep, there it is, the Sigarda. And right now, James is probably in a spot where he doesn't know what to do. He's going to be drawing some cards off that. Nope.
I think he was tapped out from the Bonfire. Oh, we're okay. Untap, play Thragtusk. So doing okay, but that Sigarda is just a clock. He's got to find another Nighthawk or something to deal with that. And the fact that Liliana can't kill it, I mean, there's just so few ways to deal with it. He kind of needs another Bonfire or Flyer with Death Touch. So not a great spot to be in, but just got to try to find a way out and fight till you get there. I definitely like the Sigarda for Dan. Oh my goodness. And this is what Dan's deck does. It just stalls you long enough to cast Fatty after Fatty after Fatty and reanimate them, and it's just a hard deck to keep up with if you can't kill its graveyard. Even if you can, I mean, it still can rip. You know, if it goes long enough, it can just rip good. It has great top decks all the way. How are you feeling right now if you're James?
James is in a bad spot. He knows right now that he has to hit something. Maybe just like some sort of removal, maybe gets Thragtusk back, but then Dan gets his Thragtusk back. He's just not in a good spot.
I'm pretty sure untapping here, James is on 0 outs. I don't think there's a way he can win this game. If he rips Bonfire, it doesn't kill the guys. I guess if he gets a Thragtusk, he can go to 1, which is still terrible, but it buys him one more turn. Okay, Dreadbore. Okay, so he's alive. He's got 1 turn left. We'll see what happens. He's got a Thragtusk in hand. And Dan has Unburial Rites though, so that this game's over. There's no outs.
Yeah, James overall has nothing that he needs to do because he plays that Thragtusk again. Dan comes back with an Angel. So,
why Unburial Rites when you can just hardcast, right?